The second I spotted her car sitting there outside that hotel, it hit me like a ton of bricks. My chest squeezed tight, like someone had a grip on my lungs. I was clutching the steering wheel so hard I figured it might crack under my hands, the same wheel I'd been gripping all day. That black Mercedes, the one she swore up and down was stuck at the mechanics for a week, stared back at me. Yeah, the very same car I'd shelled out for last anniversary because she just had to have it. But it wasn't only the car that got me, it was how she hopped out, all giggles, her hands pawing at this tall jerk in a fancy suit who seemed way too cozy with my wife. I just sat there, glued to my seat, my heart hammering so loud it drowned out everything else. This wasn't some nagging doubt anymore, this was cold, hard evidence smacking me in the face. Then, before I could even wrestle with the fire raging inside me, chaos broke loose. Out of nowhere, another car plowed right into the side of Jessica's parked Mercedes, glass flying everywhere, metal twisting with a sickening crunch. Folks around started yelling, their voices cutting through the night. That guy she was with grabbed her and yanked her out of harm's way just in time, and suddenly, the night I caught my wife stepping out turned into a full-on circus. Because right then, she locked eyes with me. Her face went pale for a split second, those big eyes widening, but it wasn't fear I saw, it was pure, red-hot anger. She stormed over to my car, pushing through the gawkers, her expression all twisted up with fury, not a shred of shame or sorry, just mad, like I was the one screwing up here. I cranked the window down just as she got to me. "What in God's name are you doing here, Liam?" she snapped, venom dripping from every word. I stared at her, then flicked my eyes to the guy hovering behind her, the one she'd picked over me. Letting out a slow breath, I kept my tone icy. "No, Jessica, the real question is what the hell are you doing here?" For a heartbeat, she faltered, just a quick blink, and I caught a flash of her realizing she was busted, but then that fake mask of hers slid right back into place. She folded her arms and let out a scoff. "You're losing it, Liam," she hissed. "What, are you stalking me now?" A bitter chuckle escaped me. "Stalking you? Nah, Jessica, I just cut out of work early and happened to catch my wife slinking out of a hotel with some other dude." I jabbed a finger toward her car, still mangled from the wreck. "You know, the one you said was getting fixed." She didn't even blink, didn't stumble over her words, didn't break eye contact. "Oh, come on, Liam, quit acting like a nutcase. I was just grabbing dinner with a buddy." I glanced at the guy standing there like a mute moron behind her. "Oh, a buddy, huh? Just dinner?" I shook my head, almost laughing at the absurdity. "You're something else." She smirked, cool as ever. "And you're pitiful." That lit the fuse. My blood was pumping hot as I shoved the car door open and stepped out. Pitiful? Pitiful's playing around behind my back like some sneaky kid and thinking I'd never catch on. She rolled her eyes like I was boring her. "God, Liam, this is exactly why she cut herself off mid-sentence. "Oh, now that got my attention." I edged closer, my voice low. "Why you what, Jessica? Finish that thought." Her jaw tightened, but then, smooth as silk, she spun to the guy behind her. "Come on, Chris, let's get out of here." Chris. So that's the name of the lowlife standing where I should have been. And right then, I noticed it, how he hesitated, like it just dawned on him he wasn't some random caught in a messy moment. Nope, he was the guy. Finally, he opened his mouth. "Maybe we ought to take this somewhere else, he muttered, keeping his voice hushed. Jessica whirled on him. "Oh, don't you start acting spineless now," she barked. Then she turned back to me. "Liam, just go home. We'll hash this out later." I let out a loud, jagged laugh. "Hash it out? Nah, Jessica, I think we're way past chit-chat." But she was already turning her back on me, like I was nothing more than a pesky fly buzzing around her perfect night, and I just stood there, watching her strut off with him, every nerve in me screaming to do something. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Jessica: "If you pull anything dumb, you'll wish you hadn't." I glared at the screen, my grip so tight my knuckles went white. Oh, she had no clue. She really thought she could sashay off, toss me a snotty little warning, and that'd be that. She didn't know the half of who she was messing with. I sucked in a deep breath, forcing myself to keep it together. Blowing up right there in front of everybody wouldn't help me, not yet, anyway. But my brain was already racing, connecting the dots, those late nights she claimed were work, the out-of-the-blue business trips, how she'd barely come near me lately. This had been brewing for months, and I'd been too dumb to see it. I swung around to look at her car, still a crumpled heap from the crash. Felt kinda fitting, like the universe handed me a little justice. For once, she wasn't calling the shots. Someone else had smashed up her shiny little bubble, just like she trashed mine. I could have peeled out, left her there with her sidekick and handled this later on my own terms. But then she messed up big time. She glanced back over her shoulder and shot me this smug little smirk, like she'd come out on top, like I was the chump here. That look, it flipped something deep inside me, a switch I didn't even know was there. I started strolling toward her, nice and easy, keeping my cool. She clocked me coming and froze right by Chris's car. "What's your deal now, Liam?" She groaned, sounding like she was already over it. Chris fidgeted next to her, looking antsy. He clearly didn't sign up for this soap opera tonight. I stopped a couple feet away and locked eyes with him. "Hey, Chris, does your wife have any idea about this?" Jackpot. Jessica tensed up like a coiled spring. "You're acting like a total clown," she shot back. I brushed her off and kept going. "Let me take a stab at it, lots of business trips, staying late at the office, feeding her that overtime excuse." I cocked my head a little. "Funny, that's the same line Jessica used to spin for me." Chris gulped, his Adam's apple bobbing hard. His hands twitched like he didn't know what to do with them. He had a wife, all right, and now it was sinking in just how bad he'd messed up. I flashed him a grin. "What do you reckon happens when I shoot her a quick text?" Jessica whipped around at me like a snake ready to strike. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, honey, watch me." I fished my phone out and swiped it unlocked. "Actually, I think she's earned the right to know this minute." Chris freaked. "Hold up, dude," I threw a hand up to cut him off. "Zip it, Chris. You dug this hole, now you get to flop around in it." Jessica was steaming, her face turning red. "Liam, if you go through with this, I'll make you pay. What are you gonna do, Jessica?" I stepped in closer, dropping my voice low and sharp. "Step out on me even more." Her eyes were blazing with hate, not a flicker of guilt or sorrow, just raw, boiling spite. I smirked right back at her. Now we were square. Then I tapped send. The instant my thumb hit that button, Jessica dove for my phone like a wildcat. I saw it coming, I jerked it back and sidestepped as she swiped at me, claws out and all. "You son of a bitch," she yelled, her eyes practically glowing with fury. "You think this is some big joke?" I let out a dry laugh and slid the phone into my pocket. "Nah, I think it's payback." Chris looked like he might hurl any second, his hands were shaking as he yanked out his own phone, probably hoping his wife hadn't seen the message yet. "Too bad, pal." His phone buzzed right on cue. He stared at the screen, all the color draining from his face like he'd seen a ghost. Jessica pivoted to him, switching to this syrupy tone. "Don't listen to him, baby," she purred, flipping into full-on manipulator mode. "We can smooth this over." I busted out laughing, loud and hard. "Baby?" I echoed, laying it on thick. "Man, that's a good one. That what you whisper to him between the sheets too?" She didn't just snap back, she spat at me, actual spit, landing an inch from my shoe. For a second, I just stood there, gawking at her, hardly believing it. "You're a real class act," I muttered under my breath. Her lip curled up in a sneer. "And you're a sad little man." Chris, meanwhile, was fumbling with his keys, itching to bolt before his whole world went up in flames. Jessica spun on him and latched onto his arm. "You're not ditching me now, are you?" she cooed, her voice dripping with fake sugar. "You know I'm crazy about you." I nearly keeled over from laughing so hard. "Oh, come on." I clapped my hands like I was at a comedy show. "That's the exact line you fed me when you were begging me to put a ring on it." Chris shook her off his arm like she was a leech. His phone started ringing. He froze for a second, then picked up. "Hey, babe," he croaked, sounding like a kicked puppy. A shrill scream blasted out of the speaker. Jessica flipped out. "Chris, hang up. We can still fix this." He shoved her back. "No, we're done here," he barked, his voice cracking as he shook like a leaf. "You swore you were through with him." "You told me," he spun toward me, chest heaving. "You guys were still a thing." I grinned wide. "Not just a thing, married, my friend. 5 years strong. I paid for her ride, her place, those cute little getaways." "You're welcome for the assist." Chris looked like he was about to lose his lunch. His wife's voice kept screeching through the phone, tearing into him. He turned his back and shuffled toward his car. Jessica went full meltdown. "Chris, don't you walk away from me," she howled. "We're in love." He didn't even glance over his shoulder, just climbed in, slammed the door, and peeled out of the lot, leaving her in the dust. Dead quiet settled in. For once, Jessica didn't have a snappy comeback. I let out a long breath, feeling the tightness in my chest finally loosen up. Guess neither of us has a better half anymore. Her head jerked toward me, her eyes wild and unhinged. "This ain't over, Liam." I shot her a smirk. "Oh, darlin'," I said as I swung toward my car, "we're just warming up." Jessica was trembling with fury, her fists balled up tight at her sides. I'd never seen her like this before, totally unglued, no more fake smiles or sweet talk to hide behind. This was the real her, laid bare. I popped my car door open, but she wasn't finished yet. "You think you came out on top," she snarled, venom dripping from every word. "You think this cheap trick changes anything? I'll make damn sure you wish you'd never crossed me, Liam. You'll lose it all." I spun around to face her, resting my weight against the car. "I lost it all the day I put my faith in you, Jessica." She let out a harsh, biting chuckle. "Oh, come off it, Liam. You weren't exactly husband of the year, dull, same old routine, a sorry excuse for a man who figured gifts would lock down my heart." That jab stung, not because she was right, but because it showed crystal clear she never even came close to deserving me. I cracked a grin. "Oh, really? Then why'd you go to all that trouble to keep me clueless? Why skulk around, spin lies, bury the truth if I was such a nobody to you?" For the first time, she faltered, no snappy comeback, nothing. I let that quiet stretch out, heavy between us, then dug into my pocket and pulled out my phone. "Oh, and by the way, I've got it all on tape." Her eyes bugged out. "You're full of it." I tapped the screen, and there it was, her hollering at Chris, spilling the beans about the affair, the insults she slung my way, all loud and clear. The color drained right out of her face. You can't." "Oh, I can, alright," I said, locking the phone with a click, "and you bet I will. My lawyer's gonna eat this up." She came at me like a bat out of hell, but I was on it. I dodged to the side, and she tripped, almost eating pavement. "Have fun spinning this one in court," I tossed over my shoulder as I slid into my car. Jessica was huffing, her whole perfect little life crumbling around her. I rolled the window down. "Oh, and I called as she whipped around, eyes burning, I gave her a smirk, hope he was worth the ride. Then I floored it, leaving her standing there, all alone in the mess she'd made. The road streaked by as I drove, my hands locked tight on the wheel. My pulse was still racing, but not from heartache, that was long gone. What took its place was something icy, razor-sharp, freedom. Jessica was finished. She didn't have a shred of hold over me anymore. I pulled into the driveway of what used to be our house, mine now, and stepped inside. The place felt different, airier, like her web of lies had finally been swept out. I wandered through the living room, past the couch where she'd lounge and fake like she gave a damn about me, past the kitchen where she used to giggle while whipping up supper, except it was all a sham. Every smile, every word, just another scene in her never-ending con game. My phone hummed in my pocket. A text from Jessica, "Liam, can we talk, please?" I stared at it, shaking my head with a scoff. She still thought she could play me like a fiddle. I chucked the phone onto the counter and headed for the bedroom. The bed sat there, still neat, her side untouched. How many nights had I lain awake, racking my brain over what I'd screwed up? How many times had I doubted myself while she was off doing who knows what? That was over. I yanked a suitcase out of the closet and started tossing stuff in. She thought I'd just sit here, twiddling my thumbs while she wrecked me. Fat chance. Another buzz, another text, "Liam, don't do anything rash. We gotta talk." I let out a dry laugh. Now she was sweating. Not because she'd miss me, that train had left the station. She was panicking because her grip was slipping. I ignored it and kept packing. A few minutes later, headlights cut through the window. Tires squealed to a halt in the driveway. She'd shown up. A quick rap at the door, then another, then full-on banging. "Liam, open up." I let out a sigh and ambled to the front, but I didn't budge the door. "Go home, Jessica." "I swear, Liam, if you don't let me in," I swung it wide. There she was, hair a mess, eyes wild with desperation. Not crushed, not sorry, just pissed. "You're not walking out," she snapped, shoving past me into the house. I smirked at her. "Pretty sure I am." Her gaze flicked to the suitcase, and her jaw tightened. "Where the hell do you think you're headed?" I folded my arms across my chest. "Somewhere far away from you." She let out a sharp, mocking laugh, shaking her head. "You're such a drama queen. You really think you're the one who got hurt here?" I stepped in close, keeping my voice steady and low. "I don't just think it, Jessica, I know I'm the one who took the hit." She opened her mouth to fire back, but I was done listening. I jerked my thumb toward the door. "Get out." She snorted. "You're throwing me out of our house." I gave her a slow smile. "You mean my house? The one I bought and paid for with my own cash?" "Yeah, Jessica, I'm kicking you to the curb." She froze for a second. For the first time, I saw the cracks splintering through that cocky shell of hers. "Liam," she started, her tone dipping softer now, "all fake sugar, let's just take a breath. We can sort this out." I stepped back and held up my phone. "I've got the recording. I've got the proof. I've got all I need to make sure you walk away with zip." Her face contorted, twisting into something ugly. "You wouldn't dare." I flashed her a grin. "Wanna bet?" Quiet fell hard. And then, for the first time that night, I saw fear flicker in her eyes, not because she cared about me, not because she felt bad, but because she finally got it, she'd lost the game. Jessica's fists balled up tight at her sides, her jaw locking as she shot me a death stare. That phony sweetness, that slimy charm she used to work people, it was all stripped away now. She was just a chick who'd gambled on the wrong play and came up empty. "You're screwing up big time, Liam," she snarled, her voice quivering with venom. I let out a quick, sharp laugh and propped myself against the doorframe. "Oh, I'm screwing up. That's a good one, coming from the gal who torched our marriage in a sleazy hotel lot. She edged closer, dropping her voice like she still had some kind of upper hand. We don't have to go down this road, Liam. We've got a whole life built together, years of it. You don't just trash that over one slip-up. I cocked an eyebrow at her. One slip-up? I snorted, barely holding back a laugh. Come on, Jessica, don't play me for a fool. I wasn't totally clueless, I just turned a blind eye to the late nights, those so-called work trips, the way you'd sneer when I even brushed your arm. I shook my head slow. Nah, this wasn't some oopsie. It was a choice you kept making, day after day. Her lips parted like she was gearing up to argue, but I shut that down fast. You fed me lies, used me like a doormat, made me look like an idiot. I stepped in, closing the gap between us. And now you're out of moves. No crocodile tears are getting you out of this mess. You don't get to flip the script and play the wounded party. She swallowed hard, her throat bobbing. For once, she was flat out of words. Then, like a trapped critter, she came swinging. All right, fine, she hissed, her face twisting up with rage. You wanna act all high and mighty? Like you were some dream husband? Give me a break, Liam, you were dull as dishwater, predictable as clockwork, a spineless guy who thought splashing cash on me would keep me hooked. I let out a slow breath through my nose, keeping my cool on purpose. She was itching for me to blow up, to lose it, she'd love that. Instead, I flashed her a calm, steady grin. That's funny, I said, tilting my head a bit. If I was such a pushover, why'd you freak out so bad about me catching on? She went still, and I caught it, that quick flash of uncertainty, the dawning that she wasn't running the show anymore. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She yanked it out, sneaking a peek at the screen. I knew right off who it was, Chris's wife. I smirked at her. Looks like I'm not the only one dropping truth bombs tonight. Her face fell flat. Liam, she whispered, a shaky edge of panic sneaking in. I just shrugged. Hey, what goes around comes around. She gaped at me, her mouth flapping open and shut like she was fishing for some magic comeback, but there was nothing left in her tank. She'd spent years weaving lies, bending the world to fit whatever tale she was spinning. But now reality was smacking her square in the face, and she couldn't dodge it. I stepped back and swung the door open wider. Time for you to hit the road. She blinked at me. You're for real. As a heart attack. Her eyes darted around the room, like she was hunting for some last-ditch way to flip this. But she was out of plays. Her jaw clenched tight. You're gonna wish you didn't do this. I chuckled low, shaking my head. Nah, Jessica, that's your regret to carry. She snatched her purse off the counter and stormed toward the door. As she brushed past, she muttered, "You're a sad case." I didn't even twitch. She stepped outside and whirled back around. This ain't finished, Liam. I locked eyes with her, my face stone cold. Oh, it's done all right. Then I slammed the door right in her smug mug. The quiet after that slam hit like a thunderclap. For the first time in forever, there was no more faking it, no more doubting myself, no more tiptoeing around wondering if I'd messed up somehow. I leaned against the door, letting out a long, slow breath. My hands weren't jittery, my chest felt steady. I figured I'd be a wreck, thought the whole mess would crush me. But nah, what I felt was free. Jessica was history, her lies, her head games, that choking poison she dragged into my life. It was all toast. I wandered back into the house, soaking in every corner of it. My house. It finally felt like it belonged to me again, not some set for her little act where I played the clueless husband while she ran her double life. My phone buzzed again. I half thought it'd be another whiny plea from her, but when I checked, it wasn't. It was Chris's wife, thanks a ton. I smirked to myself, shaking my head. Seems Jessica wasn't the only one having a rotten night. I set the phone down and grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the shelf, pouring a hefty splash into a glass. I strolled over to the living room and plopped onto the couch. For the first time in years, I could actually breathe deep. No more excuses to swallow, no more lies to untangle, no more pouring my soul into someone who wouldn't lift a finger for me. She figured I'd be shattered, thought I'd grovel, beg, try to patch up something she'd already smashed to bits. But I wasn't down for the count. I was starting fresh. I took a slow pull of whiskey, letting it warm me up from the inside. She was dead on about one thing: this wasn't over, not for her. Because while I was kicking off a new chapter, she'd have to stew in the fact that she'd lost the one guy who ever actually cared. That was her real payback. I grinned to myself, lifting my glass to the empty room. Here's to breaking free. And for the first time in a long damn while, I meant every word of it.